One rep max lifts are not inherently dangerous. Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I thought I would chat with you guys and gals a little bit about this today. And when I make this statement, I do want some caveats to be there. Number one, assuming decent form and practices are used, first of all, right? Number one. Number two, there's some sort of safeties in place. Safety arms, appropriately trained multiple spotters, right? Things like that. And three, excessive overuse is not present, meaning you're not going to have an overuse related injury because you have overtrained connective tissue somewhere. So this is something that I noted when I did conjugate. I used to do a lot of conjugate, ran it for years. I coached it for years. I've backed off on a lot of that these days. I still use elements of it. But one of the things that I noted, and then I'll discuss what guys like Dave Tate have said, that honestly, the injury rates are almost non-existent. In other words, my lifters who maxed out all the time on these different variations, which means there's like no overuse present, right? We have no real overuse happening when we're maxing on variations. It just doesn't really occur to a great extent because we're changing lifts all the time, and particularly you're rotating bands and chains or harder versions or deficit deadlifts or some closer grip bench, some floor presses, different things, right? We do these different lifts, and ultimately it kind of changes everything up. And I did a lot of crazy stuff even in my 40s on conjugate to where, I hit some things that some people would think are scary lifts, and I didn't even get strains doing a lot of it. Like I hit a 625 on a deficit deadlift. I did a 555 cambered bar good morning, right? My lifetime ever max on that. Things like that, guys. 365 close grip bench, and I'm talking 16-inch grip. We do all these different lifts, but I never got hurt doing those. I always got hurt from rep work, overuse of certain repetition exercises, right? Certain things like that. Now I ran into some overuse stuff and inflammation from wider grip benching, which is why I've cut it back out. But I never actually damaged anything. And it's the same with other people I've noted. And I remember I chatted with a coach one time I did a podcast with once. He ended up having to take it down, but he talked about that. Something I noted with him. He has a bunch of grandmas and housewives and other people. They max out on up to 4 different exercises. Like once a month. They come in and just max out. It was like the squat, bench, the deadlift, and then like the high handle trap bars what he had them max on. And guess what? None of his people ever got hurt. And here's the other thing. I remember Dave Tate saying that. He's like, I have people max on new lifts all the time just to get them to strain. Like we come over and just come up with random stuff. And I remember him saying that, and they never got hurt. Like I'd have them do a safety bar squat against chains from a dead stop off pins or whatever. All these crazy movements that just max on randomly. Teach people how to max out. Right? It teaches people how to max out. And when you get used to bracing, when you get used to stacking your wrists on every type of press, you learn how to brace your core. You do these things and you don't cheat and use just horrifically bad form. People don't really get hurt. And if anything, they get resilient. People actually get extremely resilient when they max on different variations all the time like that because they're used to awkward, weird angles. It seems to make people actually injury resistant more than anything because, again, they're prepared for when something goes wrong of how to re-brace and pull back into position because they're used to doing weird bars against chains and stuff on those systems. What Dave said, and he noted, where people get hurt? Where they get hurt? You ready? When they hit 3 rep maxes, 4 rep maxes, 5 rep maxes. He's like, I have seen more injuries with a 3 or a 5 rep max than anything else in the gym. I remember Dave saying that years ago, like 7, 8, 10 years ago, I heard Dave Tate say that. Absolute elite level strength coach. He's like, they get hurt there. And it makes sense because it's not the heavy lifting that hurts you, it's the fatigue. And now people say, okay, that doesn't make sense. Explain. Okay, so let's say on an exercise, your max is 500 pounds. I don't care if it's a bench press, a floor press, a back squat, a safety bar squat, a deadlift, whatever. 500 pounds, right? Your all-out max is 500 pounds. Okay? You do 500, you'll make it 99% of the time. It's your max, but it's grindy, it's slow. When you get under that single rep, what happens? If you have any lifting training and you know what you're doing, you're braced, you're tight, you're prepared for that single. You're prepared for it mentally if you max out. Not crazy, psyched up, oh, I got to panic because I'm not used to maxing. That's guys who get hurt. That's where guys get hurt. Guys who max out off schedule and they're not used to maxing or we didn't build to it. That's when they get hurt. My own clients, half of my injuries from heavy lifting, if not 99%, came from that. People maxing without preparing for a max. They hadn't been maxing on other lifts. They just started doing it on their own without my permission. They didn't build to it. They've been doing 5 and 6 rep sets and I wanted to test my max. They're not used to maxing and they used something really horrible with their form and they got hurt. And because they weren't listening on other cues I gave them, that's what happens. They did something silly that didn't look like a max should lift, like should look. Okay, that's where they get hurt. But the other thing, so what happens? You're braced, you're ready. If you're used to hitting heavy singles, you know how to get into position on any new lift. You just get into your groove. You ramp up to a max, you find your groove, and then once you're max, you're good. And if you miss, you just miss or spotters grab it. You don't get hurt. If you're tight, because we all get tight. If we're used to maxing out, we get tight on a max. You're tight, everything goes straight down. Okay? You go straight down under a squat. You go straight down under a bench. You come straight down to your chest. And I don't care what version of the bench it is, a closed grip, a floor press, bands, chains, boards, whatever. When you do a 3 or a 5 rep max, what happens? It doesn't happen you weren't just strong enough. So let's say 500 pounds, you go for 505 and you miss it. It goes straight down. What happens when you try to do 90%? Say you go to 450 on that same lift. What happens? It's only 10% lighter. That's enough weight to really hurt you. But when you miss rep 3 or rep 5, does it go straight down? No, you're fatigued. You are fatigued by the time you get to that rep. So what happens? What do you think happens? What do you think happens? You get pulled forward. You get pulled out of your groove with the heavy weight. You get pitched forward on the squat and it turns into a good morning on rep 3. The bench, you drive it up above your face and it comes back down towards your face, injures your shoulder potentially. It doesn't just go straight down. We misgroove from the fatigue with a heavy weight. That gets you hurt. The maxing doesn't get you hurt. The fatigue with a heavy weight gets you hurt. And that happens in the rep sets. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.